Hi guys, welcome to another week of Racing Extra, and we're excited to welcome our first guest. It's Bryce Heys. How are you, Bryce?
Excited as you two boys are. Very well, gentlemen.
Bryce, Bryce is obviously a trainer. You're based out of Warwick Farm at the moment, but you're also travelling a few horses down to Melbourne. But before we talk about the now, let's talk about previously. And I first heard about you when you were with John O'Shea. So talk us through your racing history.
Yeah, no, I'm just from a racing background in New Zealand, and it was very much a way of life and how I grew up, and you know, in terms of being involved with thoroughbreds. And I had a couple of people that brought me up that were very close friends with my mother, and you know, I spent a lot of time with them, and they were owner trainers, and as well as owner dairy farms. So, mate, it was just a way of life in terms of getting the horses worked in the morning, milking the cows, and that was really where it all stemmed from. And you know, always been around thoroughbreds, and you know, always had a really mad desire that I really wanted to try my hand at becoming a trainer one day.
Okay. And you moved over to Australia when you were how old?
Yeah, so I mean that was the basis, and you know, did a number of things. Had a wonderful time at a big stud farm in New Zealand at Windsor Park Stud, because I was very racing orientated. And although that was the breeding, it was a great time. Like, you know, I was made to work very hard, and I needed a lot of discipline when I was younger. And
as we all do.
Yeah, sure. And look, that was great. And then I had a little stint in England, but just for a couple of months, and you know, I was fortunate enough to come here in Sydney. I was always sort of captivated by, obviously, the spring carnival, and more so Sydney racing week in, week out. It's probably, from my observation, you know, it's as tough as anywhere in the world, you know. So I wanted to come to Sydney, and came to Sydney, and yeah, look, I was fortunate enough to start working for John O'Shea.
Yeah, and you would have got your hands on some pretty special horses during that time.
I think that's it's a big thing, and it's probably for anyone, and you know, through anyone that's you know, involved, and if they want to get involved with horses and be able to work in a big stable, I mean, that's the advantage. I mean, you do get exposed to faster horses, basically. You know what I mean? You stay in New Zealand, yeah, sure, the odd one comes through, but you're really exposed to slow horses majority of the time. So I think it opens your eyes a lot, and obviously between Sydney and Melbourne, and you know, the different trainers and the client bases they have, you know, really opens your eyes in terms of the opportunity that's available if you're really hungry enough, and you've first and foremost got the ability to train a winner.
Okay. That's one thing I've noticed from a lot of the good trainers of today. They always worked under good trainers themselves, and they worked in big stables. Did that give you the understanding of knowing what a slow horse is and knowing what a good horse is, to knowing where to place them?
Oh, I think it's very important. I think that's probably, you know, I think John's obviously a very shrewd placer of horses, especially, you know, early in his career, and you know, in terms of when he made his name. And you know, my time in New Zealand, I spent a lot of time at the track with, you know, some top level New Zealand horsemen that have trained a lot of good horses out of New Zealand. So just having that exposure, and I didn't really want to tie myself down to one trainer over there, because we're doing our own things with our own horses, and you know, I was always plotting my path to hopefully getting my licence one day. And then you know, I was fortunate enough to pick up a job at John's, and I worked under him. And yeah, certainly, I mean, once you've had that grounding and you get to that stage to especially to a commercial stable, you know, you then you get to obviously observe, you know, what the boss is going through day in, day out, and you know, the numbers of horses and servicing your clients. I mean, it's a whole different level, you know, from where we're at in New Zealand, and you know, being exposed to that, there's no doubting that that's stood me in very good stead, you know.
Well, let's talk about the time that the rumours started that the Snowdens were sort of exiting Godolphin, and John O'Shea was obviously a name that was thrown around. What was it like being at the stable then, and were you sort of looking for angles to go out on your own? Did it force the issue a bit quicker than you thought?
To be honest, it was a pure coincidence. Like, I think I resigned amicably with John, and I'd done just over 7 years with him. And
it's a good stint.
Yeah, like
for anyone, anywhere.
And you know, we'll probably you know, spend a lot of time with each other in terms of, that's the nature of, you know, being involved with horses. You know, it's definitely a way of life, as you hear all the time. But mate, it was purely coincidence. Like, I literally had resigned, and then I think I'm not sure if the Snowdens had resigned or not, but there was no sort of rumour mill about as to who was getting the job at that stage. And then probably it was probably a couple of months later when I was still going through the process of getting my licence and just working out where I could set up. That's when obviously John's name was in the loop to be the Godolphin trainer, and rightly so with his record.
Yeah. If you had known about John getting it, like if you could have seen 6 months into the future, you think you might have stuck around with him and gone to Godolphin?
I get asked that all the time, but to be honest, no. I mean, I just want to do the right thing, and made my mind up a long time, and I worked very hard for him, and I just wanted to maintain that work ethic. And look, I don't think I would have. I think a lot of people that really support me had had myself convinced that it was time, but I had important people around me that had been pushing me for a long time to get over that hurdle and get to there. So there was nothing sort of ever going to stop me from that regard, because once you've made a decision, there's no turning back.
Okay. And all right, so Bryce is sort of out on his own, and you've managed to get some stables at Warwick Farm. How hard is it to set up your own training base?
It's I don't know. I don't know how you do it. I do know how you do it, but when you look back on it, I don't know how
it'll happen.
Yeah, look, we're still in our infancy, but to where you start up to where we are now, and it might not look like it from the outside in, but from the inside, it's it's a massive stride in terms of the progress, and probably slightly ahead of where I would have anticipated we would be, just coming up 18 months since I first had my first horses in work. So it's look, it's a really arduous task, but it's something that you have to really want. I mean, it's like anything in life, and you really got to want it. You've really got to plan, obviously, and look, I'm just lucky to rely on some really good people, or exemplary people that are very successful in their own field, and always can turn to them. And maybe not so much in a horse sense, but in terms of very successful in their own right and what they do, and they really, it opens your eyes to probably how professional you've got to be if you're fair dinkum about it, especially in a metropolitan centre.
So how many horses do you have today?
I've got about 45 on my books.
Yeah.
And a lot of them young horses, and so we've got about 45, and we're just ticking over, and we've got a number of unraced 3-year-olds at the moment that we're happy enough with, and just didn't have, because I was fortunate enough to be able to buy some horses first time round as yearlings, and that was my window of opportunity to get those horses. I would have loved to go and buy tried horses, but the clients in those, that's not what they do. They like to go through the process of buying yearlings, and that's why we bought yearlings, and we've done that. But I didn't sort of have a second wave to be able to go out and fire again. So I couldn't afford to sort of bust them up as 2-year-olds, and I just had to have them educated, and we'd be very patient, and we're slowly but surely getting a couple of nice ones that are just starting to kick off recently.
And let's talk about the sort of yourself as a trainer. You said you buy a lot of nice yearlings. Do you prefer to take your time, and do you think you'll be known as a trainer of 3-year-old, 4-year-old sort of classic horses? There's 2 races I'd love to win. It's a Golden Slipper and a Cox Plate. So and I'm sure everyone else does too, obviously. But look, I'm fascinated by 2-year-old racing. And always have been. And a lot of that comes down to the art of being able to buy yearlings and buy horses. And saying that, I'm probably contradicting myself, because I didn't sort of buy genuine 2-year-olds. I needed to buy horses that I knew I'd have something at the end of that would train on, obviously, once they turn 3. Look, everyone says the same thing, going to be across the board, but you sort of find your niche, I think, along the way, you know what I mean? And I think I would suggest over time, I think I will have a lot more success at training 2-year-olds, just because I just think it's a little bit more difficult when you get yourself off the ground, once you get your processes in place in terms of your education of your young horses and where you're going and what surfaces you're on. I think I'm very confident, obviously, in the coming years that I'll have a lot more sort of probably 2-year-old runners and 2-year-old winners for that matter. Well, I'm sort of a bit surprised about how many horses and how often you're down in Melbourne. For a young trainer, a sort of a new name on the scene, I suppose, yeah, you're very active. How did that come about, and does it show how hard it is to win a race in Sydney, or is it just the horses that you've got are better placed in Melbourne?
I think it's just a culmination of things, Matty, to be honest. And look, I was fortunate enough to have some boxes at Flemington, which is it's a wonderful facility to have horses and work at. And the horses I had that are down there just a little bit behind the 8 ball.
Okay.
And just with that bad patch of weather that we had.
Yep.
And the other thing I would say, and it's not a knock, but they were just young horses that are probably I really wanted to hit the target, sort of first and second up, and I wanted big tracks for them and run on good tracks.
Yeah.
And look, I love going to, there's Goulburn, but like Wyong and Gosford, they're horses that couldn't go there and win. You know what I mean? Whereas if you saw a horse run at Sandown the other day that ran exceptionally well, did a lot wrong, horrid run in transit, and will still be able to fight the finish out.
Yeah.
Now he's had a wonderful day out, come home, hasn't missed a beat, and away we go. It's just the programming in terms of for those horses. I think in the young 3-year-olds, so not that we thought we were going to be in a Golden Rose, but a race at the Golden Rose was coming up far too soon for them. If they're going to hit the mark, basically as well.
How like you said that, and I think to your training style, to an extent, a lot of your horses, I think, seem to get back kind of relaxed to an extent. They don't necessarily go back to last, but you do like to relax. You're looking at bigger tracks. How important is that to a trainer like yourself? Look, we don't have Wednesday racing on big tracks anymore.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. Like I think over time, and that's where at John's, you're natural old horses for courses for sure. But they just a few of those colts that I've got, they just, Spieth would have been in a 1100 at Canterbury with the rail out 6 metres, I think it was that day. And it's not, one's not better than the other, you know what I mean? But Sandown was the bigger track and a good track, and I just knew it wouldn't matter where he drew it, he'd have a nice day out, be competitive. Probably went to Canterbury, would have gone back, would have run midfield. Owners would be disappointed, but he's probably ran quite well and run quite well on the clock. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was important to get that right, and he's also a colt, and he's a good-looking son of Thorne Park. So there's a few people wanting to see where he goes now, and it's important that we place those colts accordingly early in their careers. If they've got ability to give them the opportunity to put the writing on the wall, to perhaps be enticed by a stud or investors in the game.
Okay. It's good to see you've got the confidence that you've got these nice horses and you are looking at those black type races as young horses. Do you think you got that confidence from working under John and working under a big stable and working those horses in the past? Yeah,
look, I have no doubt, and I got criticised a lot just recently for sort of running that horse Boston Light first up in a stakes race, and also him running on Saturday. He's a horse that we purchased in November.
Yep.
And got a really good share of ability. He missed his first up run at Sale because he drew 21 or something that particular day. So we left him at home. I needed to give him 3 explain runs, and I ran him at the Valley. And look, he come through it well. And the reason he was down there was to try and run in that race, the Danehill on Saturday. And he might not have. I think he will, but he might not get an opportunity to run in a race of that nature again, and stamp himself as a future 3-year-old sprinter. So look, we've had a horrid run of luck, and probably overexposed the horse a little bit, but it's not going to stop him being a nice horse going forward. We just had to give him that opportunity, through talking to the owners and stuff as well. And I don't want to be known as trying to do that all the time, but in that horse's case, we sort of had to give him an opportunity. I didn't want to sort of get deep into the spring and still be wondering whether, is he good enough, isn't he good enough? And I think now we just come back a peg, that's fine. The horse is a bit banged up, but he'll be okay. And he watch out for wherever he steps out next, because he'll be on the board. But whereas the other 2 horses down there, one's a really classy staying prospect, and Deadly Shadow, and they've just kicked off in maidens, and they've run. A pair of them were very unlucky first up. So I don't know, mate. I just think it's not something that I didn't just start training 18 months ago. Decide to buy a horse and think it would be a Derby horse. It's something that I've not that I know, because we're always evolving and learning, but it's something that from a very young age I've watched and learnt and watched why someone buys that horse and someone buys that horse. And, you know, for us as trainers buying horses as well, we're very dictated to by breeding. So you need to have a very good understanding in terms of the breeding side of things, and also, you know, that takes a very long period of time.
And is that something that you think the punters at home should sort of get to know about you, have a look at the breeding, and that'll help them get an idea of why this horse is in this race?
Yeah, maybe. Like, yeah, for sure. Like, there's always a reason why I bought a horse, you know, and I would have loved it for some reason. And I don't just buy a horse for the sake of buying a horse either, you know what I mean? Yeah, for sure. But we always buy it for a particular reason, or what we've got in mind for when it'll furnish and then to a race it might get to. And that might sound pie in the sky, but it's very important you do that, because it's the only way you learn too. You know, like I've already made one big blue, you know, and I have no problem putting my hand up when I make a blue, because pride myself on not making it again, and you know, I'm upfront and honest, and that's the way I run my business.
That's good. Well, let's see. We touched on form. How do you, when you get a horse, trials, looking forward, how do you attack the form yourself? Do you use someone, or do you look at speed maps?
I like to ask a couple of people, you know, and still trying to find the right fit there for me, and just don't quite probably have enough runners to have someone full time with me. But it's very, very important that, I think, because it's very easy to get caught up with your own horse, and that's something that I did learn at John's for sure. Very easy to get caught up with your own horse, as we know, especially this time of year. Unraced 3-year-olds or young 3-year-olds kicking off, everyone's got a nice 3-year-old on their way to a nice race in their own head, you know. And you know, it's imperative to have a neutral point of view of saying, mate, you know, you're only ordinary on the clock in the trial, or you know, it was only fair, or so and so probably went a fraction better. You know, it's very important to hear that as well, you know. Just to keep you a bit more reserved, otherwise you're sort of 6 foot tall and bulletproof off to the races, and you just end up with the egg in your face in this game, you know. So still working through that, to be honest, mate. Love your advice. I need a bit more of your advice.
Let's talk about jockeys. How hard are you finding it in Sydney to find the right rider? And is the same issue in Melbourne, or are you sort of?
He's got Craig Williams a few times. He seemed to be having a little bit of luck down there with the jockeys. Yeah, look,
I'm just lucky to know a few of the boys. I'm good mates with James McDonald, obviously, but he's obviously tied up at Godolphin, and he, you know, obviously, you know, he ranks, his record speaks for itself, and his ability in the saddle speaks for itself. I think the other obvious jockeys, I think Huey, you know, I think from, like, Huey's a gun, and from where he was at 2 years ago to where he's at now, like, I just think he's that top echelon rider that he's, you know, I think he's the go-to man in the country myself, you know. I think when he's on fire, but very hard for someone like myself, because those boys are, you know, well, James is tied up with John and Godolphin, and although Huey's freelance, he's still, you know, I mean, he's locked up by the big stables, so and it can be very hard, because sometimes I've got owners that have got horses with Waller, Waterhouse, Snowden, you know what I mean, so they get access to Huey there, so they want Huey on with me, but he can't ride, for example, say, you know. But I mean, look, you just, as John taught me, you know, you just start at the top and work your way down. That's all you can do, especially from my point of view, being a smaller stable and don't have any power. Craig Williams helps me in Melbourne's pretty tough. Dwayne Dunn was doing a bit of work for me, but he's tied up with Hawks, so he still couldn't ride them race day, you know. Craig I've always had a relationship with, and look, it works well at the moment because of the work he helps me do at home, you know. And so I'm very loyal, and you've got to give him the right race day.
Okay.
Let's talk about, quickly before we finish, Sydney racing, small fields that us as the punters and the people watching are struggling with. Now you've had a bit of, obviously, great experience in New Zealand, also Melbourne. What is it about training in Sydney that is making these fields so small? Is it the cost? Or what do you think?
I think it's cost, and look, it's never appealing to the eye and watching small fields all the time. But I think it is the depth of racing, to be honest. I think Joe Bloggs or whoever it is. I mean, you know, even if you go to the sale, buy a nice horse, go to a 3-year-old maiden in town on a Wednesday. I mean, the reality is the firepower that you come up against now, because the Sydney trainers dominate the yearling market in terms of Hawks, Waterhouse,
Yeah.
Definitely Chris Waller now. You know, he's awfully strong and hard to beat at the yearling sales. So look, they might not be fast horses, but the reality is they're buying better bred stock.
Yeah.
Right? And the way that it doesn't always, and I'm not saying the $1 million horses are the gun horses, but I'm talking horses 200, 300,000 and by a proven size. And I think it's very hard. You know, you come to town and you're running against that. Do you know what I mean? I think that's got something to do with it.
Well, you look at the Golden Rose. Like Ecstasy has come out and won it, but I mean the Sheikh puts in that much money out of his own. He's not a. Everyone says, you know, his Ecstasy has won it. How good is the Sheikh going? He loses millions and millions of dollars on racing, doesn't he?
Well,
that's
he does.
How you have to.
And it's his passion. But I think it's, you know, just be very careful about. There's small fields in Sydney. Heard of something of probably penalising trainers that train in town but might run a horse out of town. I think you've got to be very, very careful with that. And there might be fundamentally issues outside of what you see race day as to what might you might get more horses at the races, you know, in town. And then, you know, politically probably there's a number of reasons for that. But so I think you sort of got to be very careful in regard to that, because you sort of start doing that, that's going to then make it harder again. Look, if that's the powers to be want the game to end up sort of in that dominated by the big stables, well, you know, that's who we're governed by. So you've just got to sort of, you know, we've probably got to train a lot more winners. You know what I mean?
How important are winners to getting yourself ownership?
Imperative. Imperative, and you know, it's it's the nature of the beast. It's a hell of a game for the tall poppy. You know what I mean? Like, you can sort of be doing something all right, and you're going about your business. And just had a recent experience where I was just minding my own business, and the next minute I turn my back, and you know what I mean, I'm pulling out knives everywhere. You know what I mean? Like,
is that right?
For no reason, you know. But it's just the nature of the beast, and you've got to be able to cop that, and you've got to be able to suck it up, and you've got to be able to handle it in the right way too. I think, you know, it's very easy to really get on the attack, but I think every dog has a day. So it's, you know, that's until you start training winners. You know, and even when you do train winners, but if you train winners, people want to be with winners. That's the reality.
Okay.
It's a very high and low game, and that's what people don't realise sometimes with the trainers, how high and low it really is for you.
Oh, no doubting, and you know, whether you're a young trainer starting out, or you know, even you're an established trainer, and probably emotionally, I think, you know, like it's you don't sort of probably notice it, but then there are days where you know, you look back on, you don't know how you're doing it. You know what I mean? But you got to be able to suck it up, and if you want it bad enough, you find a way and believe in your ability. You know, that's what I sort of think anyway.
Is there any goals for the new season?
Yeah, there are, and that's just to develop these young horses, and not so much just like shooting for the stars, just have a few more runners in town. You know, because I haven't had a lot of runners. You know, and that's the hard thing. And I had a few used old horses, and they've been okay, and we've got a couple of wins out of them, but they reached their limit. You know what I mean? And a couple of them were pretty bad horses when we got them. You know what I mean? So to take them up, you know, they've got a horse there at the moment that's come back, and you know, he's won a bit of money for the owners, but the reality is he wasn't a very good horse when we got him in terms of his level. You know, I'm looking at the program at the moment, and from when I got him to now, you know, he's 8.5 kilos up in the handicap from where he was when I got him. Now that's a big swing for a very low restricted class horse. You know.
So and then it's hard for him to sort of go to the country because he'll just be weighted out, and it's hard for the owner to keep him with the Sydney trainer.
Yeah, for sure. So then that's when it's sort of got to rely on probably a couple of these horses that I'm stepping at now, you know, that are just sort of just turned 3, and hopefully that they are at a metropolitan level, and we can just you know, have a bit more consistency. I mean, I'm not a big stable, so I'm not going to have a lot of runners going forward, but just have those horses running in town, you know. I think just get that level right, and then the next level will take care of itself.
All right, well, before we finish up, just, what's a couple of horses some names of some horses that the people at home should look out for?
Look, I mean, Spieth's got a pretty big boom on him, you know, in terms of a lot of people like him as a horse, and his effort was excellent the other day, and he broke the clock, and that's always good. But for me, just be careful. Like, I want to see him do it race day before I start believing. In saying that, I couldn't fold him going into tomorrow, and he's a hell of a colt, and he's got a vicious turn of foot. And if he replicates what he did first up, he'll be difficult no matter what grade you run him in. But he just, from my point of view, I want to see him do it race day. You know, get his head in front and win. But I've got a really, really nice horse there that called Deadly Shadow, and he's taking a lot of work, but I just think he's a nice horse in the making, and I think he's a nice horse when you see him up to a mile and 2,000 metres. And he's running Thursday, and I'm sure he'll run well. Just watch him going forward after that. If he behaves himself there on Thursday and we execute properly, I think sort of 3rd and 4th up when we get him to a couple of nice races, just look out for him. He's a nice horse.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I was going to wish you good luck to the end of the interview.
Here we go.
Whenever I hear someone say good luck, you always respond with,
Need it.
what's that about?
No, I look. You were just
That's
always
your thing?
We don't like to rely on luck. You know what I mean? I know it sounds a little bit negative, but in saying that, you always do need a little bit of luck. And I don't know. Just try to sound a little bit humble about things. And
Very humble.
You know, I wouldn't mind. If the luck was coming my way, I wouldn't mind it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It might help us out. So yeah.
That's good.
All right, Bryce, thanks for joining us.
No, all the best, gentlemen, and all the best to the audience.
Yeah.
And we'll see you around next time.
Hope you find plenty of winners.
Thank you.